Hey, welcome to my latest video. This one's going to be a little bit different. Rather than a delivery shift, I'm going to be out on my bike but answering some sort of frequently asked questions about the job. To be honest, these were questions asked to me by a neighbour who was feigning interest in what I do. But they were good questions, so I thought I would answer them, and they might prove useful for anyone who's thinking about doing this job, or anyone out there who's already doing the job. Maybe you could contribute and give your own answers to them as well. Hope you find it useful. Enjoy.
So one of the biggest questions, and the inevitable only question people ask is, well, how much can you earn doing this? It's a difficult question to answer, just because it's dependent on so many factors, such as where you're delivering, how busy it is, what time of day you're going out, how many hours you can go out in the day, how many apps you're using. Obviously, if you're on more apps like Just Eat, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Hungry Panda, Gopher, etc., more chances for orders to come in and more chances to earn. Some of them pay better. So it's a really difficult one to answer. Just from my own personal perspective, on average, I would say I probably earn about £13 an hour. And that's really just an average over a day. Normally I go out for 4 to 5 hours a day. A few hours in the morning around, mid-morning, lunchtime. And then I normally do sort of a few hours in the evening as well. It's generally better paid in the evening. Sometimes you can earn up to sort of £20 an hour in the evening when it's really humming and busy. But you have to probably offset that against what you're earning earlier in the day, where it can go down as sort of low as sort of 10 or even less than £10 an hour. It will also depend on how many apps you're able to use. Just relying on one app can be very, very limiting, because it just might be very quiet on one app at a particular time of day. When I first started doing this, I only was using Uber Eats, and I was getting very little just from doing that, deliveries from that one app. Sometimes it was kind of as low as £8 an hour, but as soon as I started delivering on both Deliveroo and Uber Eats, it did really go up quite a bit, just because you had just more options, more orders coming in, and then you could kind of select the ones which were better. Another frequently asked question is, well, how do you actually get started on these apps? How do you register for them? It's a kind of a complicated question to answer, particularly when I'm on my bike, but you do have to go to the website and look for the process. It's a fairly lengthy process of registering, and various checks and submissions of documents, and I think you have to do a criminal background check and various other things. So it can take a few weeks to do it. You also have to be aware that some of the delivery apps just may not need riders at the moment. I think Uber Eats tends to be fairly open all the time, whereas I think Deliveroo and Just Eat, I've tried to, for example, just Deliveroo, it took about 6 or 7 months to get registered on there. I tried to register at the beginning. When I registered with Uber Eats, they said no, we don't need anyone at the moment. And then like 6 or 7 months later, they said, oh, there's openings now, and you can register. Just Eat, I've gone back multiple times, and they just haven't accepted me. So like I said, it may depend on your area, whether it's a more saturated market and whether they need riders there. Another question people ask is about sort of equipment and buying equipment and the backpack and all of that kind of stuff. Do you have to pay for this yourself? I think certainly Deliveroo give you a sort of a backpack for free. I think you just have to pay the shipping. Although maybe subsequent bags after that you have to pay, but certainly the first one when you register you can kind of get for free. Not sure about Uber Eats. Obviously you can just decide to buy your own bag from Amazon or wherever. There's a variety of companies that sell these kinds of things. The point is you can always claim back a lot of these things on your tax. When you do your self-assessment tax form, this comes under your sort of business expenses for your work, so you can claim that back, as well as things like your insurance, because you do have to have a special kind of insurance to deliver. Again, do look up, you can kind of look up what's claimable and what's not claimable in terms of equipment, car repairs, mileage, petrol, and then a lot of these can help offset some of the tax you're going to have to pay. Another question people ask, obviously, is the job interesting? Is it fun? Do you like doing it? And for me personally, yes, I do. I really do quite like it. I find it fascinating to just learn more about the city I live in, which I realised I knew very little about before I started doing this. I've visited and seen so many different places I would never have gone to if I hadn't been doing this. And although the kind of interactions you have are pretty superficial, you do actually kind of have quite a lot of contact with people in restaurants, and obviously with the customers when you meet them, and 98% of them are friendly and nice and warm. You will get the odd restaurant or the odd worker in a restaurant who's a bit snooty, snippy, aggressive, and the same with customers. If they feel you're late, or that you didn't find their apartment, or you didn't go to their door or whatever, you will get the odd one who's gets a bit angry with you. But like I said, the vast majority, no. And there's quite a nice sort of camaraderie between the other sort of drivers as well. Often you're stuck in a restaurant, outside a restaurant, waiting, and there'll be other drivers there, and I'll often sit and have a chat with them and ask what they're doing. And there's a nice kind of atmosphere and nice warmth between drivers. Yeah, another question people ask is, is the job dangerous? They may have seen things on the news or read things about drivers being attacked and stuff like that, and obviously you're constantly on the road and dealing with people quite late at night. I think generally, if you're careful, you don't go crazy, you don't start to get sort of stressed about how long an order is taking and wanting to get on to the next one, then you should be okay. If you just follow all the road laws and keep observant, then you should be alright. Like I said, there's been a few occasions when I've been out later in the evening, gone to some pretty sort of dark places in terms of no street lighting, and there's kind of dudes hanging around and don't look particularly friendly. Times like that you do feel a bit worried and concerned, but I've never really felt I've had any serious issues, other than a time some kids kind of threw some snowballs at me when it was snowing, nearly hit me and knocked me off the bike. So another question that people ask is, well, what's the best thing about this job? Obviously not the money, as you might gather. I think for me it's a couple of things. I think it's the flexibility, the ability. It's one of the few jobs that you can kind of do at any time. Obviously certain times are going to be better to do it than others, but if you've got an hour spare, a couple of hours spare, at any time of day you can go out and make a few extra quid doing this. There's not many jobs which have that level of flexibility. Now, another obvious question is what's kind of the worst thing about doing this job? Well, one of them is this: when you pick up a supermarket order and it has loads of really heavy items in. I think this one has got 9 1.5 kilogram bags of self-raising flour and 9 kilogram bags of granulated sugar. As you imagine, not light. So that is one of the, I wouldn't say it's the worst thing about doing this job. Obviously the money's not fantastic, and the lack of consistency in the money is also not great. You don't know what you're going to earn hour to hour It's not as though you're getting a sort of a regular hourly pay for this job. You know, there is an element of kind of risk reward and gambling which can make that a bit interesting, but obviously you'd probably prefer to have a fairly regular income as well. I think if you're a cyclist or on a motorbike, then the weather can be pretty bad at times, particularly in the UK, particularly in winter. Obviously the catch-22 with that is that winter is the busiest period. People order a lot more in when it's cold than when it's hot, but it's also the worst weather to deliver in terms of rain and snow and cold and you know, going out in the evenings, particularly in winter, it can be pretty brutal at times. You've really got to wrap up warm, multiple layers, you know, heated gloves, a whole bunch of other things just to, you know, keep your body temperature up. And also that does add an element of sort of danger as well. The roads are slippier, visibility is reduced, chances of an accident are much greater. But I'd love to hear from other riders, drivers, their experiences, what they like the most, what they like the least about it, best, worst experiences, how much they make, anything that you can pass on would be fascinating in the comments. And any tips and tricks you have for improving the way that me or anyone else delivers, to try to sort of maximize how much you make and to make the process as profitable as possible.